Hi, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Sam.
And we're NV Board Gaming. And today we're going to be taking a look at Ishtar. In Ishtar, players are going to be gardeners taking on the task for the king of planting wonderful gardens in the middle of the desert for his queen. However, there are only a limited number of fountains at our disposal. So let me show you how it's played and we'll come back and give you our final thoughts. Ishtar is a 2 to 4 player game designed by Bruno Cathala and Evan Singh and published by Yellow Games. This game plays in about 45 minutes. So let's sit down and see how it's played. So as you can see, I have already set up a 2-player game of Ishtar. Now in Ishtar, every player is going to start with a player board. They're going to have 2 assistants and they're each going to get 1 purple gem. And then one player that has the board that has a number 1 in the bottom left-hand corner is also going to receive this watering can. And as players play, they're going to take 5 actions during their turn until the end of the game. At the end of the game, whoever has the most points is going to be the winner. So let's start with our first action, which is going to be selecting a vegetation tile. Now, when you go to choose a vegetation tile, the first player is going to take their sprinkling can and they get to choose where this begins. And this is going to go around on this carpet board in a rondelle clockwise motion, okay? So when the first player goes, they can choose this wherever they want and they'll place it and they can take that top tile, okay? And then you'll place this tile. But before I get to that, I do want to talk a little bit about how this works when you're choosing a tile. So let's say it's not the first player's turn, okay? So let's say it's the second player's turn. When that happens, this sprinkling can is going to move 1 space in clockwise order, okay? You can reveal the next tile in that space, and then the player has to decide, do I want to take this tile? And you can either choose to take that one for free, or you can spend a gem to go to the next tile. If you don't want that one, you can then spend another gem to continue moving around the board until you either decide to choose a tile, or you can no longer spend any gems to move forward. All right. As you can see on the board, there are additional assistants and these little special tiles here in the middle, which we'll get to in a little bit, but there will be a way for you to get additional assistance through the game. So now that we've talked about how to select a vegetation tile, now let's talk about placing the vegetation tiles. Now, when you go to place a vegetation tile, there's a couple of rules you're going to have to be aware of while you're placing these tiles. The first rule is going to be that when you place a tile, it has to connect either to a fountain or to a previously placed tile. For example, I could place this here, right? However, whenever I do place these vegetation tiles, they must be placed either on a space with sand or rock space, all right? So these cannot go on spaces where there are fountains, and it cannot cover up sacred tablets, and they cannot be stacked on top of another vegetation tile, all right? So when you're placing, you have to connect it to a fountain or a previously placed tile, okay? Now, one thing I do want to hit on when we're talking about these tiles and when you're playing through the game is you're going to see the words gardens and flower beds, which can get a little bit confusing, so I do want to explain that a little bit now. Now, a garden is going to be a collection of these vegetation tiles, and each garden may only be connected to 1 single fountain. So perhaps in a future turn, let's say it looked a little bit like this, right? In a future turn, I could not then place this vegetation tile here because now this garden would be connected to both the white fountain and the purple fountain, okay? So each garden can only be connected to 1 fountain, all right? Also, another thing to understand is that there can be multiple flower beds in a single garden. So let's say this was the case here, and this player had their assistant there. Okay, so now this garden is all connected to this white fountain, all right? But there are 2 flower beds. There is this flower bed and there's this flower bed, all right? So there can be multiple flower beds in a single garden. However, you cannot place a vegetation tile where two flower beds will come together, all right? So especially if now it can come together if there is only one assistant. However, each flower bed can only have at most one assistant. So this flower bed has this assistant, this flower bed has this assistant. So I could not place this tile here because this would combine them, and that cannot happen. That would be against the rules. So that is a placement rule to know as well. All right. So those are some important things to realize while you are placing these tiles out onto the board. Now, after you place these vegetation tiles, you are going to collect any gems that they are placed on top of. So if I had this, I would then maybe, and you can turn it any way that you want to. Maybe I want to do something like this, right? I would then collect this purple gem and put it with my supply of gems. And then after I've collected my gems, I'm then going to perform special actions based on the symbols that you'll find on the tiles. And as you can see, there are 3 different symbols that you will encounter. You will have an assistant symbol, you'll have a wild symbol, and you'll have a skill symbol, okay? The wild is going to count for either one of these. The other 2 we'll talk about right now. Now the assistant symbol is pretty straightforward. If I place this tile out on the board, I will get to immediately place one of my assistants on that space, all right? And the same thing with this question mark. I can use it as an assistant icon. However, let's talk a little bit more about these skill icons. Now these skill icons are going to refer to your player board. So whenever you place a tile that has a question mark or a skill icon, you can use that to purchase one of these upgrades. And the way you're going to purchase one of those upgrades is you're going to spend 2 gems, all right? And you're going to be able to purchase one of the upgrades. Now each one, you have to start from the bottom and then go to the top. So you cannot just automatically upgrade and get this little special ability here. You would have to do this one first. And each one does different things. For example, this one, if I wanted to, I could put 2 gems there to get 2 other gems of maybe a different color that I may need for a tree or, you know, maybe some other purpose, okay? However, if I were to place 2 gems here, that would allow me to take one of these single tiles and place them out onto the board. And what's nice about these little tiles is that they can actually go on these empty spaces on top of other vegetation tiles. And this can be useful for connecting flower beds or even just getting, you know, 3 additional points for those flowers at the end of the game and just helping make your flower beds a little bit bigger, okay? This space here allows you to get one of the double spaces that, again, you can place on top of other vegetation tiles. Here, what you're going to be able to do is you are going to be able to reserve one of the trees so that no one else can claim it, and you will get one of your extra assistants from the carpet board. Over here, you are going to be able to reserve a vegetation tile, as well as gaining another assistant from the carpet board. All right. And then once you get to the top row, these are all going to give you some kind of victory points at the end of the game. For example, here, if you get this one, each sacred tablet that is adjacent to a flower bed that you control is going to be worth 2 points. Here, you can use the assistant icons as if they were skill icons, and it's going to be worth 7 points at the end of the game. This one is going to have where you score each of your remaining gems at the end of the game. Here you will get 2 points for each tree that is adjacent to a flower bed that you control. So similar to the Sacred Tiles skill. And then over here, you are going to be able to get extra points for each assistant that you do not place. So for each one of these you don't get, or that you don't put out on the board, you will get 7 victory points. And that is the skill icons. So after you have finished resolving your skills, you will then move on to the next action, which is going to be planting a tree. Now, after you've completed your special action on your turn, you now have the option to plant a tree. And this is where these gems are going to come in handy, because other than using these gems to maybe get some skills on your player board, you can also use them to plant trees out onto the board. So for example, I may want to spend these 3 purple and 2 red to plant this tree. So I would take this card and I would plant this tree out onto any empty vegetation space on the board. It doesn't have to be adjacent to one of mine. I could place them anywhere if I wanted to. I would then flip this card face down to, kind of keep the points private for until the end of the game, and you're going to get that many points at the end of the game depending on each tree that you plant. Now, after you've planted one tree, if you have the gems, you may then plant a second tree. And after you are done planting your trees, you will then reveal the next tree card, and that way you always have 5 available. After that, that will be the end of your turn, and this play is going to continue going around and around until the end of the game. The end of the game is going to happen right over here with the rondelle. Now, once 2 of these piles are completely empty, that is going to trigger the end of the game. You will then finish the round so that all players get the same equal number of turns, and then you are going to have the scoring. All right, so let's talk a little bit about final scoring. Now, with final scoring, you're going to score points in 4 different ways. The first way we're going to talk about is going to be the trees that you planted. You're going to add up all the victory points you have from the trees that you have completed, and you will get that many points. Now, if you have a reserved tree but never actually place it out onto the board, you will simply discard it and you will not get any points for that tree. After you have scored your trees, you are then going to count up the number of flowers in the flower beds that you control, and you will get 1 victory point for each flower. Okay? Then, after you have tallied up your flowers, you will then score victory points for controlling a fountain. Now, each fountain is going to score different points. White is worth 8 points. Red is going to be worth 6, and purple is going to be worth 4. And the way you're going to find out who controls those fountains are going to be the number of garden spaces in their flower bed. So although this player over here, I'll move these so you can see, has 6 flowers to this player that only has 4, the orange is still going to control the purple fountain because they have 4 spaces in their flower bed to the blue player's only 3. So whoever has the largest flower bed is going to be in control of that fountain. Okay, and you're going to do that for each fountain. If a fountain is not controlled by any player, it will not score any points. And finally, you will score points for the skills that you may have unlocked during the game on your player board. After you have tallied up your score, whoever has the highest points is the winner of the game. And that's how you play Ishtar.
And that's how you play Ishtar. So do you want to start with your positives?
Sure. So my positives for the game are, 1, it's by Bruno Cathala, which is always a bonus for me when it comes to games. 2, I would say, is it's a very beautiful game. It's very visually pleasing. You have the nice gems that are out on the board that you're collecting. You're putting the little trees out on the board, and you're watching these gardens grow, and you're trying to, build up these flower beds that look really nice. And then you have the little 3D fountains. Those are really nice as well. So, I mean, production-wise, this game is really top-notch. Even the insert in the box is really nice. Everything has its own little place. And it all has like they have little covers to go over the tile so they don't fall around when you're storing it. So it's a really nice game that you can store vertically, horizontally, and that's a big point for me because I don't like to have to clean up a mess. So production-wise is really good. Love the insert.
And it's organized.
Right, and it's really well organized. I really like the different avenues of being able, like paths to victory, because I feel like you can focus on trying to control and compete over those fountains, and really maybe you're trying to control all 4 of them if it's a 2-player game, or you're just trying to get, control all the top tier fountains. Or you can go for trees, and you're trying to get those gems and turning them into trees, and you can get some really high point trees out there on the board. Or you can even go with the upgrades, being able to get points for unused assistants, or even your gems could score you points, or getting extra points from your trees, or even from the little stones, like the ancient stones, I think is what they're called, and getting points for those. And so I feel like you can get a lot of points in different areas, which is nice, because it gives me replayability when I come back to the game, because I can try different strategies. And chances are you're going to do a combination of all of those, but there'll be games where I lean really heavy into trees, or I might lean really heavy into controlling those fountains, or I'm just really trying to get all the tiles that have all the flowers, because I know flowers are going to add up, or I really want to go for those upgrades. And so and some games I would go straight for that. The gems give you points, and I would just collect a ton of gems. And in that, I would get 40 points, which is huge. Yeah. And so I like that because it offers that replayability. It's a really quick game, pretty snappy turns, which is really nice. Yeah. But still gives you those thinky decisions of, ooh, do I want to spend gems to move over to a different tile, or to advance further along, that little rondelle of getting tiles, and then where do I want to place this, because you're always worried about what your opponent might do. Maybe they might try to connect it to their flower beds, whatever it is. So overall, those were my positives for the game. What about you?
I will agree with it being very a very beautiful game, very pleasing to look at. I think it's and when you're done playing, it does look really cool when you have all your gardens out there and the trees and stuff. So I do love it. Is very visually appealing. I also do love that you can score points in different areas, so you don't necessarily have to focus on one thing. Each person can play differently. The last time we played, focused on getting a lot of gems, and that was different. And and then the game before, it was you could focus on trees, or you can focus on different areas. So I do like that there is replayability. You don't have to do the same thing as your opponent. You're obviously still competing for the fountains, but I like that I can do different things than you. And so I do love that part of the game. I think the components are nice as well. The gems are cool. I think the gems make the board look really awesome.
Right, it adds a lot of flavor, a lot of color, because at the beginning it's all you're in a desert. So there's not a lot of the gems really make it pop at the beginning. Yeah.
I love the whole garden, building your own garden. I think that's a cool idea, and that's why when we first got the game, that was what kind of got me. Was I was like, ooh, it's so pretty, and you can, build all these flowers, and it's putting together a puzzle, because you got to fit them certain ways, you really got to think how am I going to place these? So I think all of those things I liked about the game. And trying to think if there's any other positives, but I think that's pretty much the big things for me.
So what are some of your negatives?
Well, I feel like if the board was, I think personally that I would like the board just to be bigger, not ridiculously big where you're not interacting with each other, but just a little bit bigger.
One more tile?
Yeah, because I feel like you're so squished. Especially at the end of the game, that it's sometimes you'll get a piece that you have to place, and then you're I literally can't really put this anywhere, or where you put it, it doesn't really help you. So I feel like you kind of run out of space. So I think, just one more tile piece would make it, I don't know, easier.
Right.
I just think that you get squished. And I think too, like, it would be, I mean, you could expand out more and do more things.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's probably my only negative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really find that to be too, detrimental for me. I thought it was nice that it was like, it got thinkier, because obviously the board is very open when you start off, but as you're going, you have less and less places to place, and maybe even times when you can't get the gem colors that you want, because if you try to place them there, they would connect multiple gardens, or they might, connect flower beds that, cause an issue. And so I like that at the end, but I do understand that maybe the end might be a little bit more anticlimactic, because you might find yourself in those situations to where you're like, oh, I don't really know where to place this, because I'm not getting the right gems I need for a tree or whatever it is. So I get that you could have that experience of maybe an anticlimactic end. But I liked the ending part, because the game wasn't so long that I accomplished everything that I wanted to. Because I was like, oh man, you can't upgrade everything. You can't get all the,
Yeah.
And so I liked that urge for wanting more. And I think maybe that's probably what you were wanting a little bit. And so, and that feeling,
one goal and you're like, dang it.
Right. And that feeling makes me just want to play it again.
Yeah.
And like, oh, I didn't get to do that. I want to play it again, and I want to go that route. And I want to try that differently.
You can almost like kind of, because I think that's what I did when we played the last game, was in this game, I was like, okay, I'm going to rethink this and like, do something different.
Right.
Or, be like, okay, this happened last time and I ran out of spaces, or I couldn't do this and I want to do that next time. So yeah, it does leave you kind of wanting to play it again.
Yeah. So with that, doing our positive negatives, what would you give this as your final score, your rating?
I think I'd give it a 7.5.
Okay. 7.5?
Yeah.
All right. For me, it is definitely an 8. This is definitely an 8. I thought about going as high as an 8.5, but this is definitely an 8 for me. One that I'll always keep coming back to playing. It's one that I think doesn't get enough recognition. This is a game that we had actually put on our list when we did the top 10 of overlooked games. It's just, when it came on, it was such a beautiful game, but then I just felt like it fizzled out really quick. But I really think that this is a game that deserves a lot more recognition, deserves, a little bit more attention, because it's a really, really great, solid game. And who knows, now you might be able to get it really cheap or on sale.
Yeah.
But it is a great game. So if you find it, I would highly recommend picking it up, just because it's a beautiful table presence. It's an easy teach. You're literally picking tiles, placing them out, and then you can use the gems or place a tree. That's it. And so, it's really, but it does have those meaty decisions that you get to make, which is cool. So I would definitely recommend picking up a copy if you can. And so, yeah, let us know what you think. What are some overlooked games that you think doesn't get enough recognition and should get more attention than it does? Let us know in the comments. So please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and click the little bell icon so you get a notification every single time we post a video. And we will see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching.
Bye.